Hi everyone, Kevin Lonnquist here for On Threes on the Pony Express Hilltop Visits. We've been away for a little bit, but now we're back and we're going into the players version. If you recall our previous interviews, we've obviously talked to some of the leadership at SMU, but now we're going over to the player side and we're pleased to be joined by tight end Matthew Hibner, who is in his final year of playing college football. That sounds kind of spooky, doesn't it, that it's your last year to play?
Yeah, a little bit. Thanks for having me.
Now, you bet. And unlike the Pittsburgh secondary, I was able to catch him at the end, and so that's why we're able to have this interview with him. And so here we go. I wanted to ask you, first of all, let's talk about this offseason with this team as far as, when you all came off the loss to Penn State. And there's so much things that are said about talking points and what is said, but I want to know what the conversations were like in January when you all got back, ready to go with the off-season program, and what was the hunger, what was the talk about how to make sure that you guys can build on what happened last year, not to lament on what happened with Penn State, but to look forward to what you could do in 2025.
Yeah, I think as a team, we really felt like we had a lot of success, which, we came into the ACC expecting to do so. We thought we had, the talent, the culture, everything in place that we needed to. Obviously, the season ended a little bit disappointing for us. Going to Penn State was rough. Obviously, the championship, the ACC championship, didn't go our way. But when we came back in January, it was really just, pick up right where we left off, build off of what we had built up the year before and kind of just keep that train going. I think we learned a lot of valuable lessons from those last two games. It's always, they always say the best situations when you can win and still take away lessons. But, losing, it provides you a ton of opportunities to learn from, what happened, what went wrong, how you can get better from it. So that was kind of the mindset going into the offseason, was just putting our heads down, getting back to work, building on what we had, and then learning from what we didn't have last year. So.
And what you did have from last year was an unprecedented season for yourself. Obviously, with R.J. Maryland going down with the knee injury at Stanford, you have what is considered a career year. We talked about the 80-yard touchdown reception against Pitt. Great play, by the way. But let's just talk about your season as far as just the way you developed, because you got enough playing time during the early part of the year with R.J. out on the field. But then when your number was called primarily, you really took advantage of that. What was kind of your mindset going week to week, and then obviously the way it finished off?
Yeah, I knew what I wanted to do coming here, and I wanted to be kind of, be able to provide on both ends in the passing game and the run game, blocking, catching. I wanted to be very well-rounded. Obviously, I hate to see a teammate go down. Like, RJ's a really good buddy of mine. He's going to come back and have a phenomenal season, but I guess the silver lining of that was that I was able to kind of step into that increased role in the pass game and sort of be able to take advantage of that opportunity and utilize and kind of just handle that responsibility, which, I was at the time, felt like I was ready for and really just had to go prove it. So being able to do that and put it on film was, really exciting for me.
Yeah, meeting the moment, if you will. I mean, we talk about so much the touchdown pass reception against Pitt, but maybe more so for you was the touchdown reception against Clemson in the ACC title game. I mean, that's a moment where you guys were obviously playing catch-up all the way through into the final moments, but just being a part of that and delivering when it matters to get your team back in. Can you take me through just your performance? Because that was probably one of your better games as well.
Yeah, it felt incredible. Obviously I'd been in big games before, and it's always exciting. You're always excited and you're always juiced up going into a game, but there's just a different intensity about you and around you when you get into the big games like that and in a stadium like that. So it was really cool to be able to have a game like that. I thought as an individual played well. I thought as a team we did a lot of great things and played well. Obviously we came up short, but being able to take advantage, getting a seam ball in man going into the end zone towards the end of the game was really cool for me to be able to have to gain that trust throughout the season, and trust from not just the coaches but also Kevin to be able to deliver that ball. So it was pretty meaningful, honestly, to be able to take that step and sort of realize this is it. I'm here to do this. Hopefully just keep doing it as the next season comes and we play bigger and better games.
So for you, what experience when you were on Michigan's national championship team? You guys had the great stop at the end against Alabama in the semifinals, and of course you guys win it. But talk about what those experiences meant, even also winning the Big Ten championship game, even though that was a rout. But even so, playing in those types of games to developing you and getting you ready and help maybe be an influence on this team as it was getting ready to play Clemson. And of course, even the playoff situation at Penn State, even though that didn't go very well.
Yeah, I think it's it's kind of cliche, but the best way to get ready to play in big games is to just make it to big games. I mean, you don't really understand what it feels like or what it's really like to be in it until you're in it. And obviously those games are there's just another air of excitement about them. It's not even just two fan bases against each other. It's just college fans all around the U.S., all around the world who want to see who wins a championship game, things like that. It's just there's a lot at stake, and when there's things at stake, it just adds that pressure. And I think you can either be crushed by that pressure or you can use that pressure to become even better.
I want to ask you a little bit about your experience in playing college football here, because you've kind of had two extremes here in terms of just atmosphere. So you had the big house at Michigan. You're obviously in an intimate more setting here at Ford. But I want to ask you a little bit about what it's been like to play for two programs like this. Obviously, college football's most winningest program there at Michigan, and of course coming to a program that's just got back into the power conference level, had an unprecedented first year as a power conference school, and then making that climb. What's the differences, or are they the same in terms of just going through seasons like that?
It is definitely different. It's hard to kind of be able to put into words what makes it so different. A lot of it's more of like an intangible thing, but being at Michigan, obviously, they are a blue blood school. They've been a national brand for a super long time. When I was there, fighting for Big Ten championships, national championships. We had, Coach Jim Harbaugh there with a lot of big names at big schools. So it was that was an incredible experience in its own. And then coming here, kind of as you said, it is a little bit more of a more intimate setting. It's more, personable. It's kind of like closer relationships to the fans, to the donors. The cultures. It's a little bit more tight knit in a sense of like, we're not all just 5-star recruits, 4-star recruits who come with one goal in mind. It's like we're here to prove ourselves and prove our name. And I think that kind of plays into joining the ACC as a team too. It's like we're here to play too. Like we deserve to be on the big screen and play in these big games. And I think we proved that last year. And now it's just a matter of doing it again and saying last year wasn't a fluke. That's the new standard for SMU and the ACC.
So playing for Jim Harbaugh for 3 seasons, and then playing for Coach Lashley, which will be your second year this year. How are they the same? How are they different?
Well, they're both great football coaches in their own respects. I mean, I think one thing they both do really well is they have their identity and who they are, and they stick to that. I mean, they're as real as you get, and what you see is what you get. Obviously, Coach Harbaugh, he'd been around football for a super long time, has experienced head coach in the NFL and college football, so it is very football oriented at all times. It's a little bit harder to not talk about football because all he's done is football, and it's like, that's the main thing. Coach Lashley, when I visited here, we talked about Dallas and school and things like that, but to each their own. It's just, one thing I've learned being at SMU and at Michigan is there is no one size fits all when it comes to great cultures and winning teams. It's just when you can find your identity and embrace it and be able to take it and use it to your advantage, I think that's what makes winning teams.
Okay, so I want to rewind with you, kind of as we like to do here with players, is humanize them a little bit, because they're not all guys wearing helmets and jersey numbers and that sort of thing. So I want to read to you something that I was reading up on you, was talking about when you had committed to Michigan, is that they were talking about that in this write-up, is that great size, great physical ability, may not have the ability to run away from people. Of course, we saw that differently in the pass catch against Pitt. But, when you get recruited by a school like Michigan and other schools like that, there's a lot of weighing that comes on a person's shoulders to deal with something like that, because they've really made a push and obviously got you to sign with them. So just talking about the pressure that you had to go through when you were dealing with all that recruiting, and then once you signed with the Wolverines.
Yeah, it definitely is a lot of pressure. The entire environment at Michigan was a ton of pressure. I think, in the weight room they had like over 100 key KPIs where you were measured on everything you did, from strength to agility to speed. Everything you did was sort of graded on a scale and put up against every other player on the team. And, you kind of went from there, but it kind of proves, what you do is what matters, not what you say or what the hype is. When you get to Michigan, it doesn't matter how highly recruited you are, how many stars you had, what type of recruit you were. You're kind of back to square one, back to the bottom of the food chain, and everyone's fighting to climb their way up to the top of, the grading skills in the weight room, in the classroom, on the football field, and that type of thing. So it is a unique opportunity, but I definitely feel like it's helped shaped me into the person I am today and the athlete I am today as well.
Now, your high school coach, Mike Doherty, over at Lake Braddock in Virginia, you've spoken very highly of him and what he's meant to your career. But he did something unprecedented before you got to Michigan. This is a gentleman that's, what I've read up on, was not a fan of using trainers for his players outside of the performance course that was going on at the school level for the offseason or whatever. But he made the exception with you. He put you in touch with a former NFL player who became a trainer by the name of Leonard Stevens. He was a tight end himself. And I think it was, from what I read, and you can obviously speak to this better than any of us can, was because at the time you were a little bit thin and they wanted to get you packed on with some weight before you got to Ann Arbor. So what was that experience working with Leonard, and what did that help you not only make the transition to Michigan, but obviously what it's meant to you coming here and how you've been able to perform like you did last year in 2024?
Yeah, I have a great relationship with Coach Leonard Stevens. I mean, I've known him for a long time. I was in touch with him before Coach Doc came to coach at my high school. So that was part of the reason was, you know, I was lighter on the lighter side. I was playing basketball. I was playing volleyball in high school. I sort of made the decision, kind of a business decision, to drop those sports and focus on the football, and being able to put on the weight I knew that I needed to kind of be able to get recruited and pass that eye test. And Leonard Stevens was a big part of that. I mean, one of the most prominent things I can remember from high school is just the meal plan that I had to follow throughout school, because, you know, I was pretty skinny. As a junior, I was 185 pounds. So I was eating constantly in every single class, you know, following a diet plan to a T. Shout out to my dad for waking up early and making all the meals for me. I definitely would have been able to do it without him. But that all came from Leonard Stevens. I did a lot of my off-season training with Leonard Stevens. You know, obviously he played tight end in the NFL, so he had a ton of knowledge, especially in my position specifically. And I think, you know, especially in high school and even, you know, levels before that, tight end's not one of those positions where, you know, kids grow up saying like, yo, I'm going to be a tight end. You know, a lot of people want to be quarterbacks or wide receivers, running backs. So having that individualized training was really good for me in my development. And then obviously from the nutrition standpoint in the weight room, it was huge as well. So definitely an advantage for me to have that relationship with him. And we still talk to today. I mean, I go home and train with him whenever I'm home. And through him, he works, you know, he's a founder of Perfect Performance. And I met Daniel Karp, who's a physical therapist and trainer. And he's been a phenomenal key component to my career. I would not be where I am without him, just from a, you know, staying healthy standpoint. So wanted to give him, you know, a shout out too.
Sure. And that discipline too, you have to have a discipline as you're going through that, because it's one thing to put on 15 to 20 pounds, but you got to do it the right way too. And so, and there's also a discipline too academically. We want to point out too that you're a 4-time academic all-conference performer, 3 years at Michigan, last year with SMU with the ACC, and you're at Cox working on your master's in management. But I want to ask you about, you know, with everything that you've done athletically, I would have to think that these all-conference academic recognition awards probably mean a lot to you, because this is your future you're talking about too, because there will be a day when you have to put the pads down for good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always known that, you know, that was something that was instilled in me from my parents as well as my older siblings. And, you know, academics was always super important to me. I was super locked in through high school. I took that very seriously. It was a big factor in going to Michigan. Obviously, Michigan football is great, but their academics and their business school as well was, you know, an easy win-win decision for me. And, you know, even coming to SMU, while it was kind of more of a football decision at that point in my career, you know, being able to get my master's of business management here and, you know, have that sort of Dallas network and that SMU alumni base, you know, having that combined with Michigan, it's a huge opportunity for me. And, you know, I'm looking forward to being able to take advantage of that whenever football does end.
So tell us about, tell the fans a little bit about this internship that you had when you were at Michigan called with Princeton Real Estate with the management school at Michigan. What was that like, and what did you get out of that? Because it sounds like you really want to get into real estate once you were done playing.
Yeah, definitely intrigued by real estate. Basically, that internship was a summer internship that I did with a group of football players with a man by the name of Matt Lester, who's a phenomenal guy. He's one of the big donors for Michigan. He's very involved. You know, Michigan takes their team on trips every summer. One of our team trips was around Michigan, going up to the UP in different parts of Michigan. And we actually went up to his farm and spent a weekend there, and it was a ton of fun. But I mean, he's just an incredible guy who's had a ton of success and loves Michigan football, and is also really good at real estate. So being able to have that opportunity, to learn from someone who's been so successful in real estate, who also is, a fan of Michigan and what we were doing and our team was a really, really unique opportunity. And I feel like it was super valuable to kind of learn from him in a seminar type environment. And then, we would go out and look at properties, on site and kind of get that firsthand experience. In fact, the group that I was with ended up buying a warehouse, an industrial property that he sold, I think 1 or 2 months later and profited $1 million. So it was really cool just to be able to see, like, obviously we're not the experts and we're just learning, but to kind of be in those conversations, discussions, and, being able to learn what he sees in a property and why it sticks out to him and why he should invest in it versus not. And then kind of being able to see it come to fruition as well was really cool. And I think that was a unique opportunity that I'm very happy I was able to take advantage of.
So what about your experience at Cox? What have you gained out of that? What's been maybe the 1 or 2 things that have really been significant as you are closing out and finishing off with your MBA?
Yeah, no, it's been great. I mean, it's a super, super active school. There's a ton of things that go on. We were kind of put into cohorts with all of our classmates. So we had, events with our kind of group in that Master's of Management program. So we were doing a bunch of social events, and then also just the networking and the opportunities there were, incredible. They do a great job of putting on opportunities for you to be able to meet people in the business world, and, even internships or pursuing those opportunities later and after school was, it's honestly surprising how well they do it, being able to provide that for students. So it was really cool. And a lot of the classes you take as well, are super like real world environment. One of our classes was the Management in Action project, which was where we were basically put into groups that were acting as like a consulting group for a real company and like providing our perspective and doing research on their markets and what we would do for their business and what we would recommend, and like being able to present that and seeing them choose what to apply, what not to apply, why, just being, again, sort of like seeing the real world experience side of things was super beneficial. So it's been a lot of fun.
Okay, so we've talked enough school and management and everything.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this coming season. A lot of talk about this tight end room being among the best in the country. It's considered the best in the ACC with you and RJ's return. A lot of high hopes for Adam Moore. Stone Eby has his own niche, if you will. What's this tight end room capable of doing this year?
I think it's a great tight end room. I think I came from a great tight end room in Michigan. I've seen a lot of great tight ends, and I think I see a lot in this tight end room here. Obviously, RJ has a ton of talent. I am probably more stoked than anybody that he's coming back to be able to make plays for us, and I'm super looking forward to being on the field with him as well. Hopefully, taking away some of the coverage so that I can get open. But Stone Eby in there as well, kind of a bigger body tight end for those bigger sets. And as you said, Adam Moore coming along. Trip Reardon has had a phenomenal camp. I think he had a great spring ball too. I think he's developing and he's in great shape. I think we've got RJ and I obviously at the front, but we're a deep tight end room. So there's just a lot of, versatility that comes with that, with having a lot of guys who can play at that position.
So finally, as we wrap this up, obviously this program came into the ACC last year as an unknown, if you will. They were more of a suspect than anything else, and obviously put together a phenomenal 11-3 season. This year, you're a known quantity. You're ranked number 16 in the coaches poll, probably will be ranked in the AP preseason poll when that's released soon. So now your guys are not so much under the radar, you're smack dab on it. So dealing with that, of course, you had that experience at Michigan, but how has this team kind of handled how it's been dealing with here in terms of just understanding now how the expectations have changed from last year being kind of a novelty to it's really real, and now there's more expected upon this team?
Yeah, I think, as a team, we're finding that balance between not being exactly what the media tells us, but also, using what they say as fuel. And, on the back of our workout t-shirts, we have the phrase "prove it," because that's exactly what we're setting out to do next season. Last year, being able to come to the ACC and perform the way we did was great. But now it's our time to prove that it wasn't a fluke. We really feel that SMU's in a position to be back to, the Pony Express days where they were competing every year. And that's sort of the new standard. The standard is what you set the standard at. So that's kind of our mission, is to be able to maintain the standard that we've kind of set for ourselves. and prove to everyone else that we can sort of hang in the big leagues.
And August 30th can't get here fast enough against East Texas A&M.
Not at all.
I figured as much. I appreciate the time.
Thanks a lot, Kev.
For Matthew Hibner, I'm Kevin Lonnquist for On 3 on the Pony Express Hilltop Visits. We'll see you next time.